Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Broadband Universe podcast. I'm Craig Corbin, and it is a pleasure today to welcome the Executive Director of the Oklahoma Broadband Office, Mr. Mike Sanders. Director Sanders, welcome to the Broadband Universe.
Well, thank you, Craig. Great seeing you. And as always, thank you for inviting me today.
Absolutely. There is so much going on in the world of broadband, and especially in the state of Oklahoma. Now is the perfect time for us to have this conversation, and a lot to talk about. Before we get into the specifics of the numerous programs that you and your team are busy administering, give us a little bit of a background. I know you came to this position previously having served as the House Majority Leader there in the Oklahoma House. Give us the story of how you wound up leading the Oklahoma Broadband Office.
Well, it's a great question, Craig. And I'll be honest with you. I've always been in public service, whether as an appointee or, as you just said, an elected official. So it's always been in my DNA to be that public servant. My parents were always very community and state driven and a variety of things. So growing up in our community in Western Oklahoma, my family owned a funeral home. And so they were always about customers first and serving those families. And that was something that my parents instilled in me at a very young age. And so as I started to develop interests, elected public service was something I wanted to do. I wanted to help my friends and my family and my neighbors. And so throughout my entire career, that's what I've dedicated myself and my career to. And believe it or not, it was fate that brought me to the Oklahoma Broadband Office, because at first, I had my own company. I had my own clients, and this was right after I'd left the legislature due to term limits. But I had, a really good life and set my own schedule. And as you know, that's a rarity. But this position, when I was approached, at first I thought, well, let's look into this a little bit more. And the more I looked into it, the more I said, you know what? A lot of these communities that have been neglected, a lot of these communities that have been unserved and underserved. I knew at that point that when we started to see the mission and I started to do my own homework, I felt this was a calling. And I've always felt that public service was a calling, but this too was a calling. And we jumped head first, feet first, however you want to call it, and grabbed the bull by the horns. And we are still riding fast and furious. And so that's what brought me into this position that I currently have. And I'm very blessed for it.
It is wonderful, having the heart of a servant with your approach to the work there at the Oklahoma Broadband Office. That's the perfect segue into diving into the mission of your office, the team that you have. What is the goal? What's the driving passion there when we look at the mission statement?
It's simple, Craig. We're going to serve those who are unserved and underserved, in that order. And, when you look at a lot of the rural areas in our state here in Oklahoma, we've been talking about connectivity and broadband deployment, even back 20 some years ago when I was at USDA in Washington. We talked about connecting those communities for healthcare and education and economic development, those particular issues. We're still talking about it today.
Right.
And that's one of the things, the only good thing, in my opinion, with the COVID virus. If it taught us anything, it taught us that we must be connected. We've got to have that connectivity to run your business from your kitchen table, or to send your health records to a medical professional in a larger city, or you have an opportunity to get your agricultural products to the global market. Whatever that might be, this presented an opportunity to really shine light on that area. And boy, I tell you, we have started this journey. We had some great news, as you well know, and alluded to our viewers here, that 10 days ago we made a pretty big announcement. And this is only the first of 3 pots of money that we'll be deploying from our federal grant programs.
It is exciting when we talk about that because you refer to the multiple pots that will be utilized to draw funding from, and we'll get into the specifics. In order to set the stage, sort of as a continuation of your last thought, give us the current state of broadband and fiber availability across the 77 counties there in Oklahoma.
Well, what we did 10 days ago was a huge step. As I've said many times, this was record setting. This is
Right.
this is historic.
Right.
Of our ARPA state and local fiscal recovery fund, which is our first pot, we were able to deliver $374 million to 57 of our 77 counties here in Oklahoma. That right there was much larger than what I could have imagined even just 4 months ago. Um, but here's where it gets even better: 31 companies, all sizes and shapes, uh, rural electric co ops, telephone companies, investor owned. We even had some wireless companies. And then we also had some family owned mom and pop companies that have been in Oklahoma for years and years and years and serving their customers. Just a diverse group of companies. But here's another thing: we were able to serve 142 or to approve, the board did here, 142 projects in those 57 counties. So it was a tremendous step, something that we've all been waiting long for. But I'm telling you right now, the fiber is going in the ground. We're going to be making substantial, life changing investments for our people here in Oklahoma.
When you talk about things that are transformative, you're talking about the legacy of what will exist for generations to come in Oklahoma with the changes. And on top of that, 374 million. Of course, there's a matching funds component. So you toss in the 90 plus million, you're upwards of $500 million with that program alone to make a huge impact. You haven't even looked at the capital funds, capital projects fund money that will come in. I think upwards of 160 million. And then, of course, the conversation we'll eventually get to is BEAD and the upwards of $797 million. By my public school math, all told, about 1.3 billion.
Correct. Yeah, it's exciting.
It is amazing. And, part of what we wanted to talk about in telling the story of the Oklahoma Broadband Office today is the team that has been assembled to make that reality. And I've had the great fortune to interact with you, members of your team, on a number of occasions in the past months. Give us an overview of your mindset in assembling the team that you have today.
Well, I tell you, I've always said this: you as a leader of any organization, whether it be in your community, whether it be at your church, your school, you are only as good as the people are around you. And I've always felt like that. And another thing that a former boss and former president, a friend of mine, said that you should surround yourself with much smarter people than yourself. And that's what I've done. And let me just step back and give you some perspective, Craig. When I stepped into this role a little over 10 months ago, I walked into an office that had 3 employees and no high speed internet. Now, think
Wow.
about that. 3 employees that have been asked to build out a $1.3 billion infrastructure with toothpicks and hot glue. Oh, and by the way, no high speed internet. So we knew immediately that, one, that had to change. But secondly, we had to go out there and find the best and the brightest.
Yeah.
And we've gone from 3 fantastic employees to 15 in that short amount of time. A compliance officer, a finance officer, a general counsel, grant analyst to administer these particular federal programs, because these are all federal monies. These are all taxpayer dollars. And there's lots of rules, lots of regs. Sometimes the left hand doesn't always know what the right hand's doing when these programs work together. But I knew that by putting all of these pieces together in a very short amount of time, that we could have something looking down the road, not only would we be proud about, but when 5 years, when this office goes away, we're going to be able to tell our kids, grandkids, and further generations to come, we were a part of something historic that not only changed the lives of you, changed the lives of your kids and grandkids, but as you said, generations to come. And that's what's exciting about this. And I cannot give enough credit to my team and quite frankly, some of the people outside of our office. We worked with a group called Ready.net, and they were fantastic in our challenge process to really close that up tightly to make sure that process was as tight as it can be. And we've heard nothing but great comments from ISPs as well as other folks that were part of this program. So again, this is a team effort. You and I have talked a lot about sports before. There is no I in teamwork, and so I give my absolute kudos and tip my hat to my team.
One of the nice things too that I can say to a person, the level of passion that your staff exudes in the day to day process of going about their business is so impressive. And so, hats off to being able to promote and be in a situation where that is the chemistry that you find each and every day getting the job done. And I know that has to make things a lot more enjoyable in the course of doing business.
It is, and as a leader yourself, Craig, that I'm big on culture. I know you're big on culture.
Yep.
You've got to find the right people for the right time. Sometimes it's difficult to go out and try to hire the best and the brightest when you know that this job is going to end in 5 years. So we had to be direct. This operation had to be exact, and again, knowing and showing to those future employees that this is a calling, that we're going to be serving generations to come, and you'll be able to have your name and your fingerprints all over this. And that's what's been one of our greater, I guess you could say, selling points,
Right.
because people do want to be a part. We're all called here to serve. And if we can help those Oklahomans who have never had the opportunity to have high-speed internet, it makes it all well worth the while. So we're excited where we are, and my team wakes up every morning trying to solve problems, and I'm just fortunate enough to be leading them.
You're watching the Broadband Universe podcast, brought to you by Lit Communities. Light up your community. You deserve better internet. My guest today, the executive director of the Oklahoma Broadband Office, Mr. Mike Sanders. And Mike, you alluded to it earlier about the impact of all these programs collectively on the future of broadband connectivity. I think we agree that long ago, broadband should have been classified as that fourth utility.
Absolutely.
Because I think we missed the boat behind the eight ball, so to speak, in the timing of this. But the job is at hand. Now getting to it. You talked about the process of administering the grants. No easy task. Walk us through the mindset of you and your team in that process.
Boy, I tell you what, we don't have enough time on this podcast, Craig, but the ability to hire experienced people that have worked in federal grant management is critical. Hiring people that have had a legal background, working with state programs as well, because although these are federal programs and you have to be up to speed on that, you also have to work in conjunction with our state partners, our board, even our state elected officials here. We have to communicate that as well. But we all know that the end goal is to serve 95+% of those areas of the state that have never been covered. I'm a bit more of an optimist because I think with our programs and other federal programs that are out there, I believe we're going to get closer to 100. Even with the price of goods, even with the supply chain issues,
Yeah.
those things are going to be there. But I believe, and I will put my team, I'll even go out as far to say the Oklahoma standard, which we say a lot here in Oklahoma. We all believe that if we can work together, we're going to be able to accomplish great things. And again, if you go in every day working with that mindset, yes, there's going to be issues sometimes when federal programs kind of, don't work well together, or,
Yeah.
again, as I said a moment ago, left hand, right hand sometimes don't work out. But if you wake up every morning with the mindset that today is going to be a great day because I'm going to be connecting people, I'm going to be connecting hospitals, I'm going to be connecting those economic development folks to bring in new people, hospitals, getting the right information from your small rural communities to make sure that they have life changing, medicines. It's exciting, and I think my team as a whole comes in with that approach. And if you can do that and build that culture and believe and lead from behind, but also share that vision, you're going to accomplish, even when days sometimes aren't always the most rosy. We every day here at the broadband office in Oklahoma, we make sure that we do our best every day.
You touched on something just a moment ago, economic development. And that is something that I think many people don't understand the impact that connectivity, broadband availability has, especially in more rural areas of our country, with not just being able to develop economically, but survive
Yeah.
economically for the long haul. I know a big part of what you and your team have done involves going out and talking with people across the state. What have you heard from folks during that process?
Boy, I tell you what, that was one of the major undertakings that we did all last year. We actually visited over 30 communities throughout the state. And those of you familiar with Oklahoma, when I say these towns, you're going to be very familiar with them. But we would go from Goodwell, from the Panhandle, all the way to southeast Oklahoma to Idabel, and then we'd be up in the northeast where Miami is located, all the way down to Altus, and everywhere in between. And it didn't matter if it was in Oklahoma City or Duncan or Enid or Sulphur or Sapulpa. Every comment that we heard from the hundreds and hundreds of Oklahomans we met was, one, the affordability. It's great to have internet, but in areas that have been
Yeah.
unserved, it is really expensive to have. So the number one issue we heard was affordability, but a very close second was reliability.
Yeah.
You've got to have both. And that's what's great about these programs that we are administering, is because there is a threshold, there is a component where you must, meaning that the ISPs who are applying for these very competitive grants, they have to meet certain speeds, and they've got to be able to maintain the life of this program. And that's why fiber has always been kind of that gold standard. That's
Yeah.
been, obviously where we're going to put our focus. However, knowing Oklahoma as well as I do, and the 10 different terrains, other technologies are going to have to be used. And that's why in this first pot of money, we were able to have some fixed wireless companies
Right.
that were able to participate, because it didn't make sense financially to drill through granite and rock, and just the money would not go as far as it could. So we're excited about the flexibility that we had moving forward. Obviously, it's going to be more fiber focused, but I'm telling you, all of that information we collected from those Oklahomans all last year really helped this first pot of money, this first step, make it a reality, and we're excited about that.
That is great. When you talk about getting the SLFRF and then the CPF funds, then we got to talk about BEAD. And of
Sure.
course, that is the largest pot of money that the state will be able to draw from. And I know that there is a lot that goes into administering that project. And that's sort of the understatement, I guess, of the day.
Yeah.
But a big task at hand. I know that it's something that has been embraced by you and the team there, but it is a large undertaking and one that you don't take lightly. Give us your overall impression of what will it take to successfully administer those nearly $800 million in BEAD funding.
Well, You and I have talked about this before, and Oklahoma is no different than our surrounding partners, our surrounding states, I guess I should say. There is the time frame. One of the challenges that we're up against, and I think every state is, all of these monies are coming out at this time, but you've got a certain amount of time to get these implemented.
Right.
And again, taking into account, made in America products, from the supply chain issue to the workforce. Workforce is a major component. And then what's different in Oklahoma from most states is we have a tribal component.
Right.
We have worked very well with our tribal nations, and one of the asks and tasks that we've been able to do is to partner with our tribal nations. 2/3 of Oklahoma are tribal lands.
Yep.
So throw that into the mix,
Yep.
As well as things that are outside our control, supply chain and workforce. We can have a hand in a few of these things, but time frame is something that we're always watching. We're watching that clock. And I also think, when you're working with, the 49 states and the territories and the folks at the FCC and Treasury and NTIA, they're laser focused on their programs.
Right.
And we're trying to administer these 3 pots of money,
right,
stand up a state agency, comply with state rules, but also make sure that every T is crossed and every I is dotted. But here's the catch. You've got volume 1, you've got volume 2 with BEAD, you've got the challenge process. All of these things our listeners obviously know a little bit about, but we're going to have some listeners here and viewers here that may not know. It's basically the game book or the playbook,
right,
for Oklahomans to show how we're going to deploy. And again, BEAD is a lot of money, but there are so many areas that have been underserved. And the reason why they've been underserved, because it's costly. It's too costly to take this out to them. Whether you are in Goodwell or Idabel, you're going to have some very costly setups. That's where BEAD comes in to make sure that's deployed properly and deployed financially correctly. So I can go on, but those are the bigger challenges. But hey, we're ready to take the challenge. We're ready to storm the hill.
And I love the terminology there, because when you look at the long-term responsibility of the compliance, the reporting that will go into this BEAD program, that's a big ask for anyone. And I know that's something that is of utmost importance to you and the way that your team is approaching this project. Talk about that just a little bit.
Absolutely. We are so laser focused on making sure that, one, not only we are compliant with what we have to do here in the state, and we meet regularly with the state auditor and inspector as well as the attorney general, but also to make sure that our federal partners know exactly step by step what we're doing. These are taxpayer dollars.
Yeah.
And I assure you, the grant analysts that we have here, as well as our chief strategic officer, our compliance officer, we are laser focused. These are your dollars. We're going to make sure that they're used effectively and efficiently, and more importantly than that, correctly.
Yeah.
If these ISPs apply for job A and they say they're going to do it at this speed and this time and this and this and that, we have an accountability factor that will be put into our grant agreements that we're going to hold feet to the fire. We have to. We've put our own accountability measures on top of what is already expected. We've added another layer of accountability. And I can tell you, we don't go a day without knowing what the repercussions would be if we don't do this correctly. And that's okay, because that's our job as public servants, to make sure that the people's money is spent wisely and correctly. And we are laser focused on that.
That's exciting. And a perfect segue as we begin to wind down our time. We look at the proverbial crystal ball question, where we ask you to look down the road 5-10 years. in a perfect situation with the proper implementation of all these grant funds, how do you see broadband changing Oklahoma in the next decade?
Well, I have what I think, but I also have that if I knew 100% that question, I'd be taking you to Vegas. But I say that jokingly because I know I'm a half full glass kind of guy.
Yeah.
I know that within 5 to 10 years, we're going to be able to look back. And whether that be these rural communities that are barely hanging on, now have an opportunity, agriculturally speaking, economically speaking, educationally speaking, we are leveling the playing field. So not only are these communities able to compete with your larger cities here in Oklahoma, such as Tulsa or Oklahoma City or Yukon or Sapulpa, these smaller communities in Roger Mills County or perhaps Cole County or Kay County, they're going to be able to do the same things you can do in our huge urban areas of the state. And I'll tell you something else. Even if the only thing we do is to make sure that that grandmother who lives 7, 8 miles out of town, and she has two grandchildren that live in a neighboring state, even if she has the ability to have that communication and have that face-to-face time and see her own grandchildren grow up, then we've done our job. But I know there's going to be more than that. I know there's going to be great things when we look at it economically, what this does for rural Oklahoma. I've always said this. A healthy rural Oklahoma means a healthy urban Oklahoma. This isn't just an urban issue or solely a rural issue. This is an Oklahoma issue. And quite frankly, now that it's a national issue, we're going to make sure that we not only deliver on what we say we're going to do, but we're going to close that digital divide and bring those people together to do their job, to make sure they have life-saving medicines, to get the education that you properly need, and maybe, just maybe, start that billion-dollar company from a town of 350 people that's going to be wide world known in a small area of Oklahoma, and it's all because of high-speed internet being brought to town.
Right.
That's what I'm excited about. That's where we're going. And I can't wait to see what happens in the next 5 to 10 years.
That is so exciting. I tell you, the passion that you exude is palpable. But, when you talk about being able to succeed collectively, urban, rural, statewide, that's exactly what needs to be done across the country. So well said there. Cannot let you go before we wrap up. Know how big Oklahoma football is to you. And so I'll have to ask one more question. Okay. Welcome to the SEC, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I think
it's going to be a lot of fun. Are the Sooners on the cusp of a return to greatness?
You know what? We are, Craig, and I'm going to tell you this. I have all the faith in Coach Venables and his staff and the culture that he set or has at the University of Oklahoma. We're going to be surprising a lot of people next year because I'll tell you one thing. When you're a blue blood like the University of Oklahoma is in football, we believe in making sure that not only are championships always going to be something that we're going to be striving for, but making holistically the whole person a winner in life and a winner on the football field. So I love where we're going. I love Coach Venables. I love his staff. I love where we're going. I just hope that our fellow SEC fans will at least take it easy, at least for the first half when we come out on to Ole Miss or Georgia or Auburn or whomever. It's exciting. We're looking forward to making some trips with the boys.
This has been a great visit. Thank you so much, Mike.
Thank you, Craig. I appreciate what you do, sir. Thank you.
And on behalf of Mike, I'm Craig. Thanks for letting us be a part of your day. We'll see you next time right here on the Broadband Universe. So long, everyone.